Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism. I am your host, Alex Williams, but of course, I'm not your only host. There's three of us. We've got Nick Laporte over in corner one.
Hello.
And, of course, Ethan Myers over in corner two.
Welcome back, everybody.
I guess that leaves me in corner three. Thanks for joining us once again. This is an episode number, episode 6, I see as I'm looking at the spreadsheet we've got going on. And today we're going to start off with a little PSA from our friend Nick Laporte.
Yeah, that's for me. So there's this thing about bikes. They get stolen sometimes. And what's really nice is when your bike gets stolen, it actually gets returned to you. So that's something that didn't traditionally happen until certain things started to pop up. So there actually traditionally used to be registration programs for bikes. You could get it back, but those kind of went by the wayside in about the 70s. So there's actually this one called Project 529 Garage. And this is an organization that is working to help bring people's bikes back to them after they're stolen. In fact, when it was implemented in Vancouver just a few years ago, I think in 2015, in conjunction with the police. So the police actually have the database. They have all the information. If you want the police to get that information, your phone number and everything, you have a checkbox when you register your bike on here. And since 2015, they saw a decline in bike thefts up to 40% in Vancouver, which is absolutely incredible. And I think that's within conjunction of different things that they're doing in different places. For example, on Granville Island, having more, what do you call them? Just not corrals. What is it when you like valet services for bikes and stuff like that? That's also a part of it. But yeah, you can go on this website, and this is for certain cities. You can check to see if your city's on there. They're expanding all the time. And you can even reach out to your own city if they don't have a service like this to opt in. But it doesn't matter either way. You can go ahead and sign up as long as you have the registered serial number on your bike, which is usually on the bottom of the frame. You can go in there and register your bike on there, take a picture, make sure that's on there. And yeah, if your bike gets stolen, there's a bigger chance that you'll be able to get it back. So just a little PSA, register your bike.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do
Excellent PSA. Was it Tom from Shifter that made a video about this a while back?
He did. Yeah. He was on Granville Island. He was talking to somebody from Garage 529. Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. And like Nick said, if your city doesn't have this, get involved a little bit. You can be the one to start that process. I think, and we're going to talk more about this later in the episode, but it's important to remember that you do have some power. You do have some agency in your city, and you are able to affect it. As a small example of this, before we get to our next segment here, I submitted a 311 request the other day while I was standing at a bus stop. There was like a coffee spill and it was a big mess. And I submitted a 311 request to have it cleaned up. Within 10 minutes, while I was still waiting at the bus stop, somebody showed up to clean it up. So you can make a small or big difference in your neighborhood, and getting this Project 529 started in your neighborhood to get bikes registered. I think that's a big difference, big impact that you can have.
It also doesn't create too much infrastructure, so your city council is definitely a lot more likely to actually approve it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more of an adoption process than like hey, I'd really love for like a big parking garage out front of my house so all my friends can come over. I have a lot of friends, so I need that. So speaking of infrastructure though, Ethan has something to share with us, something going on here.
So, for anybody who's been paying attention to the Chicago Transit Authority, the CTA for short, recently they just reopened up one of their iconic lines known as the Yellow Line, and that was shut down for 50 days due to an accident that had occurred on the line. So, I want you to understand 50 days is almost 2 months in that time frame, but for transit to be shut down for 2 months is crazy because that means a lot of people who were using that line had to full-on divert for nearly 2 months. And this kind of brings up a broader topic that we were talking about earlier, and that is that roads really get a real priority when it comes to repairs. Like, politicians will bend over backwards to get road projects or, emergency repairs done on roads compared to transit. My two biggest examples come from Southern California. You had LA, the 10 caught on fire earlier this year, and that was repaired within about, I believe it was 12 days. It might have been just a week, but it wasn't shut down for very long, and there was a full-on fire underneath the highway. Now, compared to a pretty vital rail link, Amtrak's third busiest service, their busiest outside of the Northeast Corridor, the Pacific Surfliner, it was shut down for something like 8 months because of erosion due to the trackage. The track runs actually right along the Pacific Ocean. And it's just crazy to think about how all these projects get so much priority for roads rather than transit. It's like transit in this country is just completely thrown by the wayside as this kind of like little like fun thing that we kind of experiment with, but it's not actually important infrastructure, you know? And then there's also the example of the Philly Bridge, that the viaduct that collapsed and then was repaired like in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So is that actually them just ignoring it? For example, in Toronto, or sorry, not Toronto, in Chicago, was that because they weren't just fixing it, or it actually took that long?
So when it comes to it, we're still like trying to get a lot of information out of it because they haven't exactly been the best with communicating anything on the Yellow Line, because literally 2 days before they announced that they didn't have an opening date for the Yellow Line. And then literally the night before service began, they did a press conference and said, oh yeah, Yellow Line service is back. So they literally said, we don't have a timeline. And within 48 hours, they were like, service is back. And this was after it being shut down for over 48 days at this point. So
wow.
It was poor communication. And the CTA has really been in kind of a free fall when it comes to service. It kind of is suffering from a lot of the issues that the TTC is facing, with it's kind of just like managed, like there's a term for it. It's called like managed like reduction of service or something like that. But the CTA has been seeing a lot of issues, and this is really just kind of the icing on the cake, but also kind of a broader statement about transit around North America in general.
Yeah, I think it's really important because, like you said, having that shut down for almost 2 months, that completely changes the way people start to move around their city. The way that they've traditionally commuted to work or gone to some place that they typically go to completely changes the way they're going to move around their city. And then once it's returned, you know, how much of their previous patterns is going to return to that previous state. Now, someone might have just bought a car because they like couldn't deal with some other detour that they had to take. And now they're going to keep driving that car, something like that, right?
It's not exactly the longest line in the world. Like it literally only has like 3 stations on it. It is like 6 miles, but still, regardless, I mean, that's transit that's been shut down for that long. It's just insane to me that it takes that long to fix something that's essential to everybody.
Yeah. What was it that happened in the first place to lead to this?
So there was a collision with maintenance of way equipment on the line.
Oh,
so it was pulling. So the train was pulling into its southern terminus, which is called Howard. It's called Howard Terminal, and there was some maintenance of way equipment. And I believe either the operator I'm not super specific into knowing what happened, but it was something of either the signal didn't change or the operator ignored the signal or didn't see the signal, and there was a collision. Luckily, no one died because of this, but still, it's crazy that, you know, a line was shut down for 50 weeks because of it. Now, obviously, you have to do signal upgrades, but I mean, there's also a similar situation that happened in Baltimore where some of their trains were catching fire on the light rail, so they had to shut down the system, but they had it open within 2 weeks.
Right.
Interesting.
That is interesting. And I think, I don't know all the details, but I know like transit and cycling and even walking, like these are forms of transportation that have been typically delegitimized as reasonable ways to get around your city, as reasonable ways to travel and move yourself from place to place. And I hope that in the future we can work to legitimizing them and prioritizing them in the same way. And we see this, one great example of demonstrating this is the way we talk about rail versus roads. When we build a road, we say, oh, great, that will make it so convenient for me to get place to place. But then often when we talk about rail, we'll talk about it will never make its money back. And of course, we don't have the same expectation from roads. And so I think the way that we talk about our infrastructure matters as well. The expectations that we put on it and the way we legitimize getting around via different modes is really important to to allowing these things to be prioritized the same way as everything else.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I talk about transit, I always talk about all the other impact or benefits that it's going to provide. Like, hey, new lines opening up. It's going to provide service to a new area, new rail transit, going to expand upon a network, ancillary economic impacts. I mean, even if the line costs a lot, it's still going to provide some sort of benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Any other thoughts on this you want to point out or share with us, Ethan?
Not. I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to bring up, is that unfortunately we just view transit as an afterthought and don't really like to, put it on the same priority as cars, especially when it comes to emergency repair.
Yeah, I think at least in that respect, it'd be really nice to at least have everybody in North America experience the efficiency of Japanese trains. And then we can have the conversation, because I feel like there's something missing there.
Yeah.
And people haven't experienced it. They don't know how great it can be.
Yeah. And that is part of that is part of what I'm talking about in my next video on the Humane Cities channel, is kind of having that education of a variety of modes of transportation and why that matters. But speaking of education, let's talk about development. So there is an area in Calgary called Glenmore Landing. I think I've brought it up on the show before. So I will share my screen here because I want everybody to see what I'm talking about. So this development here is this is Glenmore Landing, and it's a shopping area. It's got a Safeway there and a bunch of shops and some offices and banking and all that sort of stuff. It is adjacent to our reservoir, the Glenmore Reservoir, and it's got some beautiful, this is a great outdoor museum I've talked about before. This is Rocky View Hospital, and it also has this BRT actually that even bypasses the road. It goes under that separate right-of-way. It's fantastic.
It's giving some real Australia vibes with the BRT.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Is
it Melbourne that has it? I can't remember.
Do they have a lot of BRT there, eh?
Yeah, they're quite known for their grade separated BRT. I gotta remember which Australian city it is. I know we don't exactly have all the Australian viewers, but
we're gonna take a field trip there, though. So stay tuned for the live show in Australia, everybody. Also from Brightline West, we're gonna do it on the train on the way to the Olympics. Yeah, it's also, so not only is it adjacent to a BRT, it's also adjacent to our multi-use pathway system. This path will carry you all the way into downtown Calgary with almost no interaction on roads. You've got pretty decent routes that way. But this is being talked about for redevelopment. So let me crack open this picture here. So this is Save Our Parks, Stop the Towers. So there was a lot of conversation against this development here. And this is one of their advertisements. And they say, Save Our Parks. This is what it looks like and their possible future, which I think a lot of people would look at this and be like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, I think that's interesting. The park they're talking about is this land right here. It's basically a boulevard. It's really, like, I have used, part of their concern is people are worried about this pathway. How will I use this pathway if I live in this neighborhood here? I need to use this pathway to get over here, right? Is that all going to be gone with this new development? And of course, this will be gone, but the plan has like a main street running down the center, and they're basically just moving the pathway, right? But there were, of course, a lot of concerns about environmentalism and such things. But people in this area, they organized against it really effectively, and they got involved and they showed up to city council meetings. And one of the councillors brought up that 99.9% of people who made public submissions were against the sale of this land, not even just the development, but the sale of this land to RioCan, the owner of this property here.
Yeah. So just to put a little bit more context to those people who might just be listening, essentially, when you look at this from the air, it looks like basically a strip mall, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a clear zone beside a highway. Essentially, it's a big fat road. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically a big clear zone. This is not a
Yeah.
park. This is not some kind of
This
big
is
green space.
basically
It's a lawn.
it's a town center.
Yeah.
It's a mall. This is a
Yeah.
Yeah.
mall.
Yeah. And yeah, so they want to develop it into mixed use housing and add some walkability. And it's an ideal spot for this because it has the BRT right there and it has the multi-use pathway right there. But of course, the same concerns are brought up about parking, about can our utility systems manage it? And I think the city administration did a pretty decent job of addressing those concerns. And so today, while we were getting ready to record this podcast, I made Nick and Ethan tune in to a little bit of council, and they actually passed this. There will be a final hearing of it for City Council on January 30th, but right now it is passed, and it's looking like it's going through. So I'm very optimistic about this development, and it has given me hope.
Yeah, it's good to see it go that way too, because I've paid attention to a lot of city council meetings where the vast majority of people were, wanted something to happen that was definitely going to be good. It was a progressive thing that got canned. And this seems to be in the opposite direction. We have a lot of NIMBYs coming in saying, we don't want this development. And instead the councilors went ahead with it. That's good.
Yeah.
At least for us.
Yeah. And I think for the city broadly, right? Like this is something that I want, but it's not something I want in order to preserve my neighborhood. I used to live in this area for a little while. I've frequented the area at various times throughout my life. And I think it's really important to look forward and be a YIMBY, right? We use these words. We use NIMBY, not in my backyard, which often means somebody who says who wants to build housing. We want density. We're okay with density. We're happy to have density. We're happy to have affordable housing. Just not in my area. Just please don't build it near me. And I think I try, and I think a lot of people try, especially in the urbanist space, to be a YIMBY, to say, yeah, like this does belong in my community. My community needs a variety of amenities and services and things like that. And I also, when we use the word NIMBY, I also kind of want to talk about not being like, not using it to other people, right? Because the people who bring up these concerns in city council, whether you feel they're legitimate or not, and I know I've said this on the podcast before, they feel they're legitimate. And you have to treat their concerns legitimately. You have to ask them about them. You have to talk to them about them. And they are members of your community. They're people who live next door to you. And just as much as you try to be tolerant of any other demographic or any other group of people who you might feel you are different from, I think people who oppose these things, you also have to try and work with them and talk to them and maybe even make a friend, So that's my grandstanding on the NIMBY thing is it's a useful word, I think, to describe the way some people talk about certain issues, but just don't let it become like a derogatory thing.
Absolutely. Having conversation with people, because as soon as you insult somebody, and I know we're going to get into this conversation in the future much more deeply when talking about different political directions that people like to go and shutting people out, it's better to have that conversation instead of just naming somebody. They're just going to get defensive and they're not going to be able to open up to you. They don't want to hear what you have to say, and it's just going to go nowhere. So you make a good point.
But I'm excited for this development. Do you guys have anything you want to add on to this, or did I ramble enough for the three of us?
Just want to say one thing here. When it eventually gets developed, because I'm optimistic, they're probably going to have to upgrade to an LRT line.
Well, and that's actually another thing. So in one of the Reddit threads about this development, there have been several. In one of the Reddit threads, somebody said, the bus won't be able to handle it. You expect everybody to take the bus in this area? Well, the bus can't handle it. It's like, okay, well, the bus can handle more than the road. Also, you can just add another bus, right? Like just one more bus, bro. And if that still can't handle it, Calgary, we've talked about this on the show before. Calgary has the second busiest LRT system in North America. We move 62 million people every single year on our LRT. We're no strangers to LRTs, and we know that they work here. If it is too much for the bus to handle, put in a train. Yeah. Like, that's it. You want to move people? Like, put in a train.
Yeah. I think the beautiful thing about that too is that, you know, when it comes to induced demand, the problem with the commons, when you're on the road space and you want to drive somewhere, it only gets worse for everybody when people keep using it. But when it comes to transit, this weird thing happens where the opposite happens. Now, a ton of people start using transit. It actually gets better for everybody because frequency increases. And that is the transit that I want to use. And that's the transit that I typically get to use most of the time here in Vancouver. It's pretty good. I don't look at the time when the bus is coming. I just go there and I know that's going to be there within 5 to 10 minutes. It's not a big deal. But when you have to wait, 15 to 30 minutes, it kind of sucks. And it's no wonder people aren't using it.
Yeah. Had to wait 30 minutes for the bus, or I have a 30-minute bus frequency near me. So
my condolences.
Yeah, it sucks. And I can see why people don't take it. 15 is like the threshold, I would say.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, 15 is, it's like, okay, well, I can live with that, right? But once you get to 30, it gets to be rough.
It's like
going. And
15 is like, I can deal with this. 20 is like, yikes. Yeah. 30 is like, this is awful.
Oh yeah, especially if you're on a connecting route and you get off the bus and you see the bus go by and you're like, I gotta wait 30 minutes for the next one.
Do you know what though? Oh my God. Shout out to transit operators because they are so helpful. There have been several times where, and I have some footage of this sort of thing happening, where I'm coming into a like kind of bus loop where a bunch of buses stop, right? It's kind of more of a bus station. And we're coming into it and I see the bus that I need turn on its left blinker and start to like pull out. And I walk up to the front and the bus driver says, "You need that one, right?" And I said, "Yes. Is there any way," like the first time it happened, I'm like, is there any way you can like radio to them or something and like let them know that I need that bus? Otherwise I'm waiting. It was late at night, so I would be waiting anyways. And they just immediately, without hesitation, just honked on their horn as hard as they could and as much as they could. And the bus stopped. And then I hopped off. I was like, "Thank you." And then they said, thank them. They stopped and waited an extra second. Nice. And I got on the bus and I'm like, "Thank you." But then now, actually, because they know that this schedule lines up just barely, right? Because they know that, they actually know that I'm coming on like those specific days on my journey home from work. And so they kind of expect, oh, Thursday, Alex will need to hop on my bus. And so shout out to transit operators who pay attention to the transit users, to the people who are using their bus and rely on their buses and try and make sure that, they work together to get you home safe and sound. So just really appreciate it. Every time it happens, I make it a little note because I track all my transportation. I'm like, the bus waited for me, like they did something nice and it wasn't off schedule, but it was just like that extra second that manages to get you there.
Yeah. And even if it's not some kind of special situation, just thank the bus driver when you're hopping off. It's super easy. Always. Thank you. And they appreciate it. I'm sure they do.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a few bus drivers I have who always ask, "How are you doing?" And they're really considerate. They always, if they see a more elderly person getting on the bus who's maybe a little bit more frail, they're always more patient with starting to go. They always wait till they're seated in their seat. Whereas when I get on, once I have my hand on a bar, they'll peel out.
Oh, they wait for you to have your hand on the bar? As soon as I scan my fare and turn the corner, caution, the bus is now in motion. Oh.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Is there like a little thing that they say?
The speaker will, new flyers.
Really?
Oh, wow.
For Vegas RTC, yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
Otherwise, you go rolling down to the back of the bus.
Yeah. I think Muni might have that where they say it, but yeah, once the bus starts moving, there's a little announcement that says, "Caution, the bus is now moving," or "The bus is now in motion."
That's cute. Thank goodness you said something. I wouldn't have noticed as I'm falling around the bus. That's funny. I like that. I like that.
Oh wait, no. San Francisco's is just, it's just, please hold on, and it'll repeat like 7 times. I know anybody who rides Muni can come and just like, please hold on. Please hold on.
That's funny. The only one we really get in Calgary on the train is, please stand clear of the doors as this train is trying to depart. And the other day after that announcement went a couple times, because as the doors closed on my train, I heard like some yelling outside, and then this announcement came on a couple times, and then the driver, things are serious when the driver comes on the intercom, and he says, "Get on or off the train." And he says something. He's like, "Peace officers can be here in 2 minutes." There, and then after a threat of a ticket a couple times, we got moving again. But that was entertaining. It was,
you do not want to hear anything
happened
from the train driver. If you're hearing that, you're
no.
Bus driver, different story. Train driver, you need to immediately.
Yeah. Unless the speaker system, like the automated system, is broken.
Yeah,
that would be fun, right? Your next stop is Sunnyside Station. I would love to do the train announcement.
Actually, if it's from the operator, it's.
I know.
Usually sounding a bit grumpy too.
You guys, every time when I was in the UK and I'm like traveling around by rail, and I get they have a different accent than me, but I feel like I can understand the English accent pretty well. But all I heard was and I'm thinking, was that important? Like, do they know that they're not being heard? Same thing with pilots. Like, do they realize that we can't understand a thing that they're saying, or are they just like rolling with it?
I think they're doing it on purpose. It's kind of just an inside joke. They're doing it for fun.
Yeah.
Right. They're like, this information is not actually important. Please listen closely.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It kills me.
We had a special guest on our buses. I think even the SkyTrain not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Seth Rogen. He recorded his voice and did a bunch of announcements and stuff. And for a short while, he was the voice you heard on the bus.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Yeah. Stop it.
Hey, Vancouver, this is Seth Rogen. Yeah.
That's funny. That's awesome. I love that. And you know what? Vancouver, actually, you guys have like a lot of celebrities. You guys could have all of the science fiction TV show stars come on. Like you could have like Amanda Tapping from Stargate be like, "Hi, Vancouver. I'm Amanda Tapping, and I'm going to be your voice today."
It's totally chill when celebrities do the announcements, but like I remember seeing this thing in June where it was like they were playing like ads over the intercom at some stations in New York City, and the entire urbanist community like flipped out on it. Yeah, and to be fair, for good reason.
Yes, like
it wasn't just the urbanist either. It was like everybody in New York.
Yeah, because it's not just that ads are obnoxious. It's also that when an announcement comes on over the intercom, you're supposed to listen. But if you get used to just hearing ads over the intercom, then you just tune out the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a transit system that cried wolf.
Yes, yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Well, I've loved this little diversion onto transit conversations, but I think we should get to some ethical boundaries that we need to set or something, whatever Nick's about to talk about.
Yeah, this is something I wanted to talk about for a while, and it's something I think about on the regular when I'm out on the streets, and it's what I just learned this word today, Narc Urbanism, and I thought that was fantastic. So this is another New York thing. I think I've talked about New York for the past 3 episodes. I love New York. Like I can't, honestly, favorite city in the United States, favorite city in North America, maybe. It's like
I'll
up
get
there.
you
It's definitely
New York
top
shirt.
3. I love New York. I would wear that shirt. I bought a mug for my wife when I went last time. She uses it all the time. So she loves New York too. It's great. Anyway, this is about bounties. So I'm sure many people have seen the video from Casey Neistat. He's a YouTuber, a vlogger, kind of a mainstay in the vlogging community on YouTube for sure. And he had a video a while ago where he was talking about bike lane bounties. Essentially, he was riding his bike in the bike lane. There was a car blocking the bike lane. He had to divert into the street to get around this car, and he got a ticket for not staying in the bike lane, which is actually not a thing. It was not a thing. Like that was, you can ride in the road. But anyway, he got this ticket and the police officer said, you have to use the bike lane. And he's like, okay. So then he just rode around, basically running to the back of cars, running into signs as a joke of people parked in the bike lane and talked about.
This is an iconic video. This is like 10 plus years old. Yeah.
Yeah. And he basically said that you could set up this bounty system where you could make a ton of money just, writing in all these people who are parked in the bike lane. And lo and behold, New York went ahead and sort of did it. They planned on doing it. So they've done a few things. So I'm going to start pedal back a little bit. I think this is back in 2015, and they introduced an idling bounty system. And this still exists right now where you can call in, and this is just for big trucks, actual work vehicles that are stopped idling. If they're idling for 3 minutes or more and nobody's in the vehicle, they have all these qualifications to actually get it through. But if that happens, you can get 25% of that bounty. And I can't remember what the price is. I think it might be $75 you'll get at the end of it. And people have made quite a lot of money sending these videos in of these trucks idling for 3 or more minutes, which is a thing. But conversely, there was a problem because NYPD basically stopped ticketing private vehicles. They had in 2015, they had 5,000 citations. And then 5 years later, they had 40. Completely dried up. But that's one part of it. Back to the bike lane thing. So this is another one that they have introduced. But what they did was they changed the provisions that they originally set out, and there's no longer a bounty system. So they did introduce this. I think it was in March of last year. So you can call in things that are in the bike lane, whether it's vehicles or trash or whatever, and you can call that in. However, you will not get the money for that specific citation. No bounty, 25, not the 25%, nothing like that, which is what it is. So I just wanted to bring this up to talk about it. What do you guys think about this? So this is one thing I'm going to say right off the bat for me. I think this is a great idea. Even if there wasn't a bounty, if there wasn't money involved with it, I think it's a good idea. I think this is great. For example, here in BC is idle free. This is a law in BC. It's the same thing. Anywhere in BC, if you're idling for more than 3 minutes, that's considered breaking the law. Do they hand out tickets for that? I highly doubt it. Anyway, let me know what you guys think.
So there is this really good account on Instagram called Bike Lane Uprising, and their whole thing was they pretty much started an app to report bike lane blockages anywhere. I think it was any North American city, but they're based out of Chicago, so most of their reports were coming in from Chicago. And I don't know specifically, I haven't talked with them specifically on the details of the app. It's a really good one. I would check out Bike Lane Uprising. They're a really great creator with a good app. But I don't know if they actually report that to local, law enforcement. Along with this as well for New York City, they're well known for the bus lane reporting too, and how their buses actually have cameras on them.
Yeah.
And the MTA loves to animate these little GIFs where it's a car's blocking the bus lane, and then the bus will come by and literally eviscerate, straight up turn it into nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have seen those videos. Those are pretty amusing. I don't know how I feel about the bounty thing. I'm a fan of getting the city the information that it needs, and also making sure people can get around safely and securely regardless of what mode they're choosing to use. Obviously, the best solution is separated infrastructure so that cars can't get on to the bike lane in the first place. But also, I don't know. I have weird feelings about the idea of having a bounty for it. And I feel like I would need to see more information about how it works and if it's effective, if it's actually making a difference, or if it's vigilante justice. I would want to learn a little bit more about it before I had an opinion.
Totally. And I think they have a lot of rules around this when it comes to reporting. For example, the bike lane thing, I believe there's an instructional video you have to watch before you can report anything. And for example, the idling one, like I said before, it has to be an empty vehicle to prevent confrontation, because they don't want that to be a thing. So there's those different things that help with that to make it less disruptive, maybe, or again, confrontational to cause these big problems. They don't want people getting shot over this. And that's always something I always forget. Like I remember watching a video. This was about the San Francisco center running bike lane in Valencia. And they were doing this thing where they were diverting bicyclists around parked cars in the bike lane as kind of a protest. It was called like a just a minute. They'll just be just a minute. So they basically use their bodies as pylons so the cyclists could go safely around the car that's parked in the bike lane. And they went to talk to somebody the bylaw officer in San Francisco, and he was hesitant to confront drivers who were in the bike lane. And his worry was that they might have, he said, I don't know if they're packing. And I was just like, oh my God, like I didn't even think of that. It didn't come to my mind. Like, oh my God. So that could be, what is that? Are we going to have, oh yes, we have less people in the bike lane, but now we have murders are going up from, road rage confrontations, essentially thing like.
Don't you just love how cars encourage great interactions with the community?
Very healthy people.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Everybody loves to drive until, something's in your way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my stance is pretty clear. I think it could be a good idea with certain provisions around it. In general, we need more enforcement. But most importantly, we just need good infrastructure. Like a lot of this has to do with just gutter bike lanes, parking, like the doors are on bike lanes. Like these are just terrible infrastructure for cyclists in the first place, for the most part, that drivers can actually get into.
Yeah.
But the idling one, oh man, that's definitely what grinds my gear in the future. I'll really get into. I take video all the time of people idling just so I can save it for later, because I know I'm going to use it for some kind of video in the future. Oh man, it just, especially here in Vancouver, it'd be like 15 degrees and someone's sitting in their car on their phone. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, just you're wasting your own gas. Just fuck. Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's not that hard to shut off your car and start it back up again.
Yeah.
No, totally. It's not.
Well, what about the starter? I don't want to hurt the starter. The starter's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine.
It's designed to start your car.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my God.
You'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh man.
It's even more acceptable with battery cars, because now you have, an even more finite range with less charging stations.
Yeah. It will be interesting. I'll say that'll be something interesting to see as we get more and more electric cars. What's that, Nick?
So I just have one more thing to say about this whole bounty thing, and this is what this video that actually spurred me to bring this up on the podcast is this video I saw on the Micromobility New York City subreddit that somebody shared. I'm sharing right now. And essentially there was a bus that was blocked. I think this is in Brooklyn, maybe. So there's a bus that was blocked from turning because of a parked car that was too close to the edge of the curb, or too close to the intersection. So the bus couldn't turn. So a bunch of citizens literally lifted the front of this car and moved it out of the way so the bus could turn. That is teamwork right there. That is community coming together for the greater good.
Yeah,
that's why we need an actual bounty system for stuff like this, where like somebody's blocking a bus full of people from getting to where they need to go. Like easy ticket, just like take a picture, send it to the city. They're like, okay, like it shouldn't be that hard.
And when they finished, they said, and that's how we do it in New York.
Yeah.
I'm walking here.
I'm walking here. Hey, I'm trying to walk here. But no, I think that's excellent. And I've seen it many, many times where somebody is parked where they shouldn't be. And I mentioned that even in my most recent video, where somebody was parked in front of a curb ramp. That, blocking strollers. And I mean, somebody with a stroller maybe has the mobility to kind of get it off and down the curb in a weird way and, maneuver themselves around. But if you're bound to a wheelchair, suddenly your path is just totally blocked. So I think it's really important that we build the environment, right? That this instance of this person who had to have their car picked up and moved over because they were parked too close to the intersection. That could have been solved just by having one of those extended curbs, by having a bulb on the edge of that sidewalk. Making it so that you cannot park there.
Yeah.
Not so that you're not supposed to park there, but so that you cannot park there. So that everything else can flow well.
And there's quick
right?
and cheap solutions to that, right? Even those soft hit
Yep.
posts are a great way to stop people from parking in those areas.
Yep. Yeah. And we see
To an extent.
see those,
Yeah.
yeah.
To an extent.
But, you know, you can put down concrete barriers too, right? Like you can. There are options.
You got your fair share.
Yeah. But with that, let's get on to some listener mail. And Ethan's going to drop us a beat here for our listener mail intro. Ethan, do you want to drop us a beat?
Drop us a beat. You're asking me to drop it.
Ethan, I just looked at our cast of characters here, and I was like, if anybody can drop us a beat, it's Ethan.
Absolutely not.
Okay. I'll do it. Ba-doom, boom, poo, ba-doom, boom, poo. Listener mail on Radio Free Urbanism.
But this is an opportunity. You just wanted to do that. You had this prepared, didn't you?
I just wanted to put Ethan on the spot so that he said like, no, I won't do it. And then I was like, I'll be the hero. I'll be the hero.
Set yourself up. I like that.
Incredible.
Yeah,
now we have an audio clip for the transition into listener mail.
Yes, it's true. We do. Our first listener mail is from the delightful and wonderful Hall's Emporium. Jen Hall, frequent listener. She's been with us from the very beginning, all the way back in 2023. And she says, on the note of pedestrianized spaces from this episode, a perfect example of how much people enjoy pedestrianized spaces is how much they'll pay to be in manufactured pedestrianized spaces, aka amusement parks. Points at self. And if you know Jen, you know she'd do it in like a really cute, awesome way. To then spend more money within the parks, it's one of the things that makes me return to Disneyland Resort in Anaheim, California. Cars and horse carts that only go 5 kilometers or 3 miles per hour at best. A train that circles the perimeter of the park, and places to sit, shop, eat, scattered everywhere. So many people don't realize their home neighborhoods could be designed the same way, minus the rides, or I mean, plus the rides, and their property taxes are the entrance fee instead. Could you imagine? I did editorialize that a little bit because, I mean, why not put a roller coaster on your street? Have the roller coaster tycoon music playing as you walk out your front door, and the screams of happy riders.
Keep hearing those giggles.
Hearing the giggles, and then the little notification sound, the such and such customer is lost and cannot find the park exit. Okay. Well, I'm going to leave them there, wandering around
in a circle,
bowels of a roller coaster. So I think that's a great comment and a great point. You guys got some thoughts on pedestrianized spaces?
Yeah, this is something that gets brought up all the time, I think, especially if you go on Reddit, if you go on Fuck Cars or Suburban Hell or Urbanism, whatever. This is always brought up that people love to go to places that are walkable. They love to go there, even though they don't live there. Oh, we can't have that here. They go, like Jen says, to Anaheim, to Disneyland, or to Florida, any kind of amusement park. They go to Europe and experience the walkability that's there and to say, this is awesome. But they don't, it doesn't really cross that threshold that can be in their own backyard. That can be where they live. It can happen. It's not like, oh, this can't happen. It can happen. You can make that happen.
Yeah. It's so funny. I lived in a small, major tourist town in Florida, and the main claim to fame to it was our one pedestrian street. One street that was pedestrianized. Main claim to fame. Yeah. And you're just like, we could have this in every single city in this state. And it wouldn't be it would still be wonderful, but everybody would have access to this rather than just having one small example of it.
Yeah. Just creating these pleasant spaces to be, right? We travel to Europe. We spend thousands of dollars to go somewhere else to experience these walkable streets. And then we come home and we tell our friends, oh, I went to Barcelona. It was absolutely wonderful.
Barcelona.
Barcelona. Why don't we do that here? It was interesting when I was in the Netherlands last year. I went to you know, every town. We were staying in a small town in the south. I say small town. It was 50,000 people. We're staying there, and they've got tons of walkable streets in the town center, and everybody was enjoying them. Everybody that I was with was, wow, this is wonderful. I really enjoy this. And as we're biking along on our rented bikes, and I say, you know, we could do this at home too, and they're like, no, we couldn't. I'm like, yes, we can. Like, it's really, guys, this isn't rocket science. Right? Like, we can do this.
Okay, so to the people who are just listening, Alex was actually moving his body as if he was pedaling a bike.
Yes. Yes. Do you know
he's actually on a Peloton right now, yeah. Everybody who's only listening to audio.
I'm always pedaling. The stool I sit on, it like wobbles a little bit. It's perfect. It's perfect for pretending I'm cycling, because that's all I think about is bicycles.
We all have such different setups. It's going to eventually have to be on like a shorts or like our social media of just showing off all of our different setups.
Do you know what? That would kind of be interesting because I always wonder, you know, what do people think is in this box? You know, what's in that box? And now that I've started the mystery, I'll kind of sit in front of it a little bit, and we can think about that.
A little tease
for the rest of the show. Yeah, but pedestrianized spaces, we can do that. We've talked before about how Vancouver has none. Nick, do you have any recommendations, or what is this pointing? Did something happen?
There's no pedestrianized streets. There are more pedestrianized areas. A lot of Vancouver is very pedestrianized. You can walk a lot of places. Like we talked about the walk score. My neighborhood is very walkable. I walk to most places that I go. And there was something that happened recently. So after City Nerd Ray released that video about places that should be car free, and he was talking about Pike Place, I plan on making a video somewhere in the future, probably in the summer, about Granville Island and what can be changed. But I went to do some filming there on the weekend, which is a relatively walkable place when you get there, but it is full of cars and it has tons of parking. It's insane how much parking. So when you actually get there, underneath the Granville Bridge, there's a big sign that says Granville Island, and there's 2 boardwalks on either side. That's for pedestrians to walk on. And then there's 4 lanes for traffic, including bicycles. So I turned on my chest GoPro to just be like, oh, if you bike here, you have to share the road with cars, or you walk on the boardwalk with pedestrians. That's the only way to get on the island if you're a cyclist. And lo and behold, I posted this on my Instagram. I'm just riding down. It's a 30-kilometer little street in a tight turn into a pedestrian space. Really should be really slow. I get almost sideswiped by a BMW who just comes right in front of me and slams on the brakes. And I'm just like, what the fuck just happened? Like, why is that necessary? And obviously I was slightly glad to just highlight on how this should be a more pedestrianized space, because it was just fucking stupid. Like, why are so many cars here? Anyway, that's my little rant there.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate your rant and I validate your feelings.
But go to Granville Island still. It is a great place to go.
Why are so many cars there is a question I have every single day.
Yeah.
That's actually Ethan only thinks about Granville Island.
Yeah, exactly. Only Granville Island.
Consumes all his thoughts. Yeah.
I only think of British Columbia.
I mean, who wouldn't? It's beautiful British Columbia, you know. Ethan, what about Vegas? I know like Vegas has the Strip, but there, you know, I've been there and there's a lot of car traffic.
Yes. So pretty much every major thoroughfare, because Vegas has a pretty constant grid throughout the entire city, which is something that surprisingly a lot of North American cities just kind of lose once, you know, you get towards the edge because, you know, suburban sprawl. But Vegas has maintained its grid pretty well throughout the city. And unfortunately, a lot of its thoroughfares are just, you can't widen them anymore. You're at capacity for it. Like, if you get any wider, you start getting 12-lane, 14-lane stroads, and there's already a ton of surface parking. So at this point, I mean, Vegas is just one of those cities where you're like, oh, we've reached capacity on cars, and we're really limited on where we can sprawl to, because we have huge mountains in the east, huge mountains in the west, not so big mountains in the east, but still mountains. We're starting to build into the mountains in the south, which is not exactly the greatest plan. And then the only real area you can sprawl without mountains is north. But then once you go far enough north, you start running into military land. So really, realistically, you've kind of had capacity on cars because all of Vegas is pretty much just car-dependent infrastructure. So the city is going to have to adapt in some sort of way.
Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing about cars, we mentioned this earlier. Nick brought it up, how with cars, you get to a capacity. The more people using that infrastructure, the worse it is for everybody, right? Regardless of how many lanes you build, no matter how many bridges you make, right? It's going to get worse for everybody. Whereas transit, the more people that use it, the better it is for everybody, because you get higher frequency, better speeds, more routes, all these other sort of things. One thing that my city councilor, Councilor Penner, brought up in the city council meeting today, she brought up that the car traffic in this area where they were talking about this development, it's not just going to increase because of more development in the area, it's going to increase because of more development outside the area. So when we continue to sprawl and we expect that we're going to keep the density in these specific areas, and these specific areas are going to be the places where everybody wants to get to, you have no choice but to create more sustainable and efficient modes of transportation, because you can only get so many people into downtown. If you keep sprawling, you're going, at some point, it's going to break. At some point, you're going to have to say, we need to build a second downtown. We need to do something else here because this is not working.
And that does work, though. That does work. And I remember listening to a podcast, I think it was Vancouver Urbanism. They had somebody on who used to work for TransLink. They were an urban planner for TransLink. And they were talking about the North Shore in Vancouver. So if you're not familiar with Vancouver, Vancouver's on the south part of the Lower Mainland in BC. And the North Shore, obviously, is the North Shore Mountains. And then there's people live along the mountains there. And before it really developed on the North Shore, a lot of people were coming across the bridges. There's the Second Narrows Bridge, Ironworkers Bridge, and the Lionsgate Bridge that comes into downtown. And a fact that I learned from that podcast was that the traffic over the bridges peaked 20 years ago. And the big reason for that is because of the development that happened on the North Shore. People had stuff that they could go to locally. They didn't have to come to Vancouver to get the things they needed. And that's a big part of having those communities where you have things closer to you. It prevents people from making these long journeys that are completely unnecessary.
Yeah. Send traffic going in the other direction.
Yeah.
Right. Balance it out a little, provide other options, because there are limits. No matter, no matter how many clover leaves you put on the road, there are limits.
No matter how many diamond interchanges you make.
Hey, actually, Calgary has a diverging diamond interchange, and it's kind of interesting. It's the first one in Canada. I don't know if they've done more since.
They're getting pretty popular now.
It's creative. It's interesting.
Creative.
Yeah.
That's a term.
Ethan.
That's a word.
That's a term for it. Yeah. Not exactly the best for pedestrians, but
No.
We have our next piece of fan mail, though.
Yes.
So let's jump into it. So this is from Ben Serzer 7966, and they commented on our last video. Another national park that's served by rail is the New River Gorge National Park in West Virginia. And actually, I went right past there. I took Amtrak's route that goes right by it. It's called the Cardinal, and it's the only, actually, it's not the only train that runs through West Virginia, but this one actually does run through New River Gorge, and it's a really pretty train, I have to say. It's probably the best views for any East Coast Amtrak train, and I highly recommend it. So, yeah, it's really nice. The train itself is a little weird. It's kind of Amtrak's, I'd like to say it's Amtrak's redheaded stepchild of its intercity routes, or of its long distance routes. But yeah, it runs 3 days a week. It runs from Chicago to New York. It's a little bit longer than the other ways between Chicago to New York, but the views on it are pretty great.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that. I love that there's another one that we missed. This is the thing, guys. We could talk about this stuff. There's a reason that I always just talk about Calgary things. Is because that's what I know. Like, we need people to send in other stuff from other places so that we can hear what's going on there. Send us an email. You can send that to radiofreeurbanism@gmail.com to make sure that we hear and talk about what's going on in your area, because we know that there's more to the world than Calgary, Vancouver, and Vegas. Believe it
There
or
is?
not.
Yeah.
I know.
Let us know.
It comes as a shock to those of us on the show, but yeah, so send that in. Nick, if you want to take us to the next one.
Yeah, this is on our YouTube channel again. This is from Austin Surson. He says, I'm getting really excited about Train Daddy and Amtrak's future. I really want VIA to come out with a proposed expansion of all the markets they could serve, but that assumes VIA will ever get out of the Stone Ages with their procedures and inefficiencies. I saw a video recently about VIA could have true high-speed rail, but between Ottawa and Montreal with their current budget for HFR, I think. What VIA should have done, that's in quotes, by Paige Saunders. Interesting. I'll have to check out that video. I didn't actually know.
Interesting.
This is really cool. Yeah, we talked about VIA a little bit. I think it was a couple episodes ago. I'm not sure. We was talking about that corridor that between Windsor and Quebec City and the opportunities that exist, not only there, but in a lot of places in Canada, but especially between Toronto and Quebec City, like that whole corridor just there. You could forget Southwestern Ontario, London and Windsor and those areas. Like,
Yeah.
the opportunity is unbelievable. And again, like we talked about with Calgary and Edmonton, like Ethan said, what better city pair do you have in Canada for trains? Like, it's incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, like we talk about stuff in Vancouver and Calgary, but you got to remember, like, BC and Alberta, where Nick and I live, has like so few people compared to what's going on in that whole little strip, in that basically straight line between Windsor and Quebec City. So many people live there. Most Canadians live there, I believe. And so as much as we talk about, hey, Vancouver could do this or Calgary could do this, why don't we try that? Like, that area of Canada, it's like, it's absolute nonsense. Like, it's criminal that more hasn't happened.
We go international, right? After that, head down to Buffalo, Rochester, all the way to New York City would be just amazing.
There's just such a perfect straight line that you could do for high-speed rail between Quebec City and Chicago. It would be insane.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That would be amazing.
You get Detroit, you
go
get
all the way to Milwaukee.
Got to do a little wraparound around the lake.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be incredible.
Yeah. Actually, on stream, a few weeks ago, I was doing a live stream, and I was playing NIMBY Rails, if you guys know what that is.
No.
It's this game that essentially uses like real world data to allow you to build like different transit lines and stuff like that. And I had personally imbibed a few beverages, and I was like, fuck it, I'm building a tunnel between Milwaukee and Detroit. And so I just straight up dug a tunnel underneath the middle of Lake Michigan to connect Detroit and Milwaukee by high-speed rail.
Oh, that's what I do when I play City Skylines. I just make the most ridiculous lines, like way deep under the water and stuff. So satisfying.
Because why not?
It's got like a 25% incline for a train.
Yeah, totally.
It's literally a roller coaster.
You got a cable car in there.
I have something to share, actually, since we're on Austin's comment here. He actually texted me while we were recording the show here. He sent me a picture. Dystopian images of the day. Michigan Theater in Detroit, where they turned it into parking instead of keeping it as an arts venue.
God, that's terrible.
This is a real place.
Yep.
So for listeners, what you're missing here, if you go to our YouTube channel, you can see this. There is a beautiful historic building that has just been turned into a multi-tiered parking lot, a parkade. It's kind of dystopian, but in a weird way, I appreciate the art value of this absolute nonsense.
The problem with this is that it was unlikely that this theater would have been saved. It's likely it probably would have been destroyed. Detroit really went through it really took a beating on deindustrialization, and then the recession didn't do it any favors. So it's a city that's been through the ringer, and downtown has definitely seen a revival. But I mean, that's kind of a signature of how Detroit really kind of has fallen from grace.
Yeah, this is in Detroit or Ann Arbor?
Detroit.
Okay.
From the looks of it, right?
Detroit.
It doesn't matter.
Detroit.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's been that way for quite a while. Yeah. That's really sad.
Yeah, so that's Michigan Theater.
I believe Detroit was in one of the top 5 biggest cities in the U.S. Detroit and Cleveland were both in the top 5 at one point. They've lost more than half of their population. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I used to spend some time in Detroit. I used to live in Southern Ontario, not far from there, near Windsor. So if we wanted to go to, the big place, go to a zoo or something, we'd go across the border and go to Detroit. And it's interesting to see how it's changed, because I remember going there when I was younger, and the whole city, the core was just hollowed out. And it still is in a certain way, but they've really developed that certain area around the sports complexes with the new hockey arena, Comerica Park. And that area is nice. It's like this little cute, like a walkable place with lots of things to do. But outside of that, it's still very dire.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's that one park right in downtown that's really nice from everything I've seen. It's like right where the Q line kind of ends. For those who don't know, the Q line is the streetcar that Detroit has. I can't remember the name of it, but it's really nice. It's kind of like their central, like main, like green space for the downtown area.
Interesting. I haven't seen it.
Yes.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
This is kind of part of the point of building more sustainable cities, because there is growth and there is shrinking as well. So you want to be able to create a space that will continue to hopefully be beautiful.
Now, also building a ring of highways around downtown didn't exactly help either.
No, it's a big moat.
It's crazy. Yeah. Spaghetti bowl. Like we were talking about Milwaukee last week. And that, what was it? 718? I can't remember the number of that highway.
794 or 784.
Yeah, 794.
789.
794. Yeah.
794.
We got blow it up. Just blow them all up.
Hold on, guys. I gotta share this in the stream here. Give me 1 second.
What's he got? What's it gonna be? Can we guess? Oh, it's gonna be something blowing up for sure. Explosions.
Oh yeah, it's 100% gonna be explosions. So here's the downtown park. This is the dense mixed use walkable urbanism that we're missing in North America.
That's disgusting. Who would want to live there?
No one.
Yeah, that looks exciting and fun.
Where is this? What is this?
This is Detroit.
Wow.
Really?
I think.
Can you describe it for our listeners?
For our viewers, I believe that the name of this park is pronounced Campus Meritus Park. It's in the center of downtown Detroit. And from this view, it looks like it's some sort of like winter festival with a bunch of lights, and I believe there's a little Christmas market there too. But yeah, they've basically pedestrianized the whole area for this event. It's really what you want your city to look like.
Yeah, it looks lovely.
Yeah,
I was being sarcastic earlier. Sorry.
Well, we better keep going. And we better move on to some wugmug. We've complained about a few things in here, but Nick's got one that sounds a little personal.
Yeah, a little bit. So, am I the only one who's done the what grinds my gears?
No, I think we've taken our turn.
Yeah, we may not have called it wugmug, but it's definitely like we've definitely taken out our frustrations on it.
So I think a lot of my list of what grinds my gears is usually from comments I get on social media or my YouTube channel. Anyways, what grinds my gears is people telling me to grow up and buy a car, because I have a car. But besides that, is it really responsible? Is it really grown up to spend $10,000 a year on transportation when you don't have to? A bicycle can't cost more than $1,000 a year. Even transit passes here in Vancouver, I think anywhere from $1,200 to $2,200, unlimited riding on TransLink. Like, that's ridiculous. So is it really that responsible and grown up to do that, to buy a car? I think maybe not. I think that's the wrong thing to do if you really want to be a responsible adult. Just saying. Yeah. Something that ruins your own community, that pollutes the air for everybody, including yourself. Get out of here.
Yeah. And it's always
you shut the fuck up. Sorry.
Car profile picture on Instagram means that you are going to see the worst comment you've ever seen in your entire life and never take it personally.
Yeah. I got to say, I really appreciate the people who go into my comment sections and I'll see them like on the same video weeks after it's been posted. I'll keep saying the same person responding, like kind of in defense of our cause, the urbanist cause, and the things that we care about, and people who just post the same fallacies over and over. I just like, thank you so much for like doing that. Cause Sometimes I get into it. I'm like, no, just don't. Just like don't. It's not even worth it. Just put that energy into new content. That's the way to spread it. But man, I just sometimes copy paste.
Yeah, that's fair. The people who go into my comments and or any of our comments and just, say the most ridiculous flaws like get a car, grow up, my favorite thing is just giving them, I know you guys might be better than this, but I'm not. I always give them the pin of shame because I know that there's plenty of reasonable people who understand. And I know that these people are never going to be saved. So what you do is you just simply give them the pin of shame and just pin them in your comments and then just, see your normal, lovely viewers tear them to shreds.
Yeah.
And, people who happen upon these comments will see, plenty of statistical arguing from your wonderful followers. And, we'll be like, maybe getting a car isn't the most mature or smart financial decision.
Yeah, that's a good point. But also, we have to take consideration, like Alex was talking about earlier about not just throwing people under the bus and being super pissed off and letting your rage flow. I really try not to let that happen because, again, it just makes people defensive. I usually try to say, just be really reasonable. Like, for example, one of my videos is about light timings here in Vancouver with the cycle lanes not letting you the green wave at all. You get the red wave, red light after red light. And a lot of people always say, well, if we prioritize bikes over cars, isn't that just going to cause more emissions if you make cars wait? And it's like, well, actually, it's more complex than that, because if you keep prioritizing cars, more people are going to drive because it's easier to drive. And maybe they don't know that extra step. Maybe they haven't thought about it that deeply. So you do have to share it too. But at the same time, you tell me to grow up and buy a car, I tell you to shut the fuck up.
Exactly. It's a disingenuous way of responding.
Yeah. And again, what I meant to say was a callback to what you were saying, Alex, about the delegitimization of other types of non-auto-based transportation. And that's exactly just part of it. Telling people that you're not an adult if you don't buy a car, or if you're on a bicycle, that's just something you're doing for recreation. It's a toy. You're doing that for fun. It has nothing to do about where you're going on your daily rides. Like it's just so weird. It just seems so strange to me. And I kind of want to talk about, and I'll talk more about this in the future, but I remember Horace Dediu talking about this. He's the guy who founded Micromobility.io, about when you finally really dig into this stuff, you start to come to the perspective that it's not that micromobility is this weird thing on the outside. It's not that public transportation is this weird thing on the outside. You start to realize that cars are the weird thing in our community. And that's the thing we need to start unbundling to be more efficient. So I think it's the Overton window shifting, and we'll get there. It's going to take time, but I don't even know where I was going with this. I just wanted to say these are legitimate ways to get around. Like, what's the difference between me driving 5 kilometers to the grocery store versus on my bike? I still got there, right?
Yeah. You're just.
But now you can't haul 90 gallons of milk home. So what?
Yeah, you probably can though with a box bike. But yeah.
Do you know? I had a thing to say, and now it's gone. But
it'll come back next episode.
Yeah, it is. Maybe it might, but it is really frustrating. That's what I was going to say. You can't have productive conversations over the internet. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of energy to type out a comment in a way that you will hopefully not be misunderstood, right? It's difficult to get across your tone, or if you're communicating in a language that is not your first language, it can be hard to make sure your language is precise as you would like it to be. Whereas I try and imagine that most of the people who comment nasty things on my YouTube channel, like skill issue, or I don't know how people like you survive, I like to imagine that I would be able to like make jokes with them in real life, right? That if I met this person in real life, I would be able to laugh it off and say to them like, well, actually, it's not as hard as you think. And have that conversation with them, and maybe invite them to come on a bike ride with me where I can show them how I do get around, or maybe ride the bus with me and show them how I do get around. So I try and remember, this is the internet. People are making a lot of assumptions about me based solely on what I post on the internet. They've never been in the kitchen with me while I'm making dinner or while I'm doing some meal prep. They've never walked down the street to get the mail with me and just had a casual conversation. They've never passed me on the sidewalk and I've just said a casual hello. And then they say, oh, actually, did you know that's Jupiter up there? Right? Like they've never had those like very casual, just normal human interactions with me. So they're making assumptions about me based on the content that I'm putting on the internet, which includes my YouTube videos. And of course, they're going to make assumptions about me. And of course, I'm going to make assumptions right back. So when I get comments like that, I try and just go outside and touch some grass and remember that I like my neighbors and I like the people that I see in real life. And that's fine.
That's good. I like that.
Nice.
Thanks. There's my second grandstand of the
what a
episode.
lovely wholesome grandstand though.
It's really good perspective, because I feel like if there was, three of us who were definitely not in that direction, we'd just be spiraling into shitting on people all day. So I respect it.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
I'm not saying I don't like shitting on people.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be clear. I love gossip, and I don't think gossip is bad. But that's a conversation for a different podcast, I think.
Or a future after show, people.
Or future after show. You could support the show. We might set up a Patreon at some point here. But we've got some recommendations. This
is me. So one last thing, and this is in the vein of what Alex often likes to share at the end of a show, is something positive. And this is something I just saw on Twitter. Somebody had posted this. They were talking about something completely unrelated to urbanism. But they said, remember, you might not be able to change the world, but you can change the world around you. And I think that's a really important thing, especially when you're talking about politics, especially when you're talking about the community you live in. Because a lot of people will talk about federal politics and how it doesn't matter and you can go vote. It won't make a difference. Maybe, maybe not. But where you can absolutely make a difference is in your local community. So get out there. If you want change to happen, you can literally be a part of that change. Go out there and do it.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Get to it, Nick. People.
Ethan, do you have any recommendations? And as we close out, plug your own stuff. Tell us where we can find you.
All right, everybody. So you can always find me at Climate and Transit on pretty much every social platform, or Climate Transit on Twitter. That handle was somehow taken before me. But I will have a video next Friday. This Friday I'm taking a little time off, but next Friday I will have a video. It's going to be one of my longest yet, so stay tuned.
I'm excited for it. Nick, where can we find you?
You can find me on YouTube at Nick Laporte or at Nick the Door on most places.
Love that. Love that language play. And I'm Alex Williams, and you can find me at Humane Cities on Instagram and YouTube. And you know what? My goal for 2024 is one video a week. And I was successful last week. I did publish a video. And this week, I actually am working on my Netherlands.
Oh, yeah.
Video. So
that's
actually going to be an exciting one.
Yeah.
Yes. I went there, I witnessed it, and I have things to say about
Alex is going to be orange-pilling the whole audience here?
Or maybe de-orange pilling. Maybe I was deconverted. We'll just have to wait and see. So you can tune into my stuff at Humane Cities on Instagram and YouTube. And with that, make sure you give us a follow at Radio Free Urbanism on all of the platforms, and send us an email about what's going on in your area. That's radiofreeurbanism@gmail.com. Thanks once again for joining us, folks.